Ian, welcome back to the Revelation Wellness Podcast. We had you here for your last book. Was it called The Way Back to You? Was that the one?
There were two books, The Road Back to You and
Okay.
then The Story of You.
Okay. And which was the last one?
The Story
The
of
most
You.
recent story of you. So you have written another book that is going to resonate with our audience. It's called The Fix: How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and everyone in between. Always good to write a book that basically can be for everyone. And if ever a book, we were praying together, if there's ever a book that is perfectly timed for now, it's right now. So
Hmm.
why don't you go ahead, just give people who are, you could be new to them, who you are, and then tell me what you learned in writing this book.
Yeah, so I am a psychotherapist, an author, an Episcopal priest,
Yeah.
a trained spiritual director, a speaker, an Enneagram teacher, and if you can believe it, a songwriter. And
Oh, wow. I did not know
yeah,
that. That is
I know
that
a
that
little.
is not in your bio. You got to add that.
No, no, it's not. But that's actually that was
Love
what I did
that.
before I wrote books.
Oh, I love that.
So, and when you look at all of those different silos of things that I do, they really all are in service to one life mission, which is to
Mm,
introduce people to ideas and experiences that that deepen and improve their lives. So
wow.
that's the little errand God sent me here on to accomplish in this life, right?
Sure.
And I'm also a person in active 12-step recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction. And that has been part of my story since 1987.
Mhm.
And I got to a place where, through a number of circumstances, where I was like, I have been so helped as a follower of Christ by following the 12 steps, not
Wow.
in place of the gospel by any stretch of the imagination, but in parallel. They really,
Yeah.
really, when what most people don't know is that the 12 steps derive from a Christian organization in the 1930s called the Oxford Group.
Mm.
And really, the 12 steps are the gospel in miniature, right? Like it's just here's how you live a gospel life. Try following these 12 steps. And you know, Christians tend to think, oh, there are those people, right? Drug
Mhm.
addicts and alcoholics who need those 12 steps. And then there's the rest of us, right? And I'm like, actually, that's not entirely true,
Wow.
number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And number two, why should alcoholics and drug addicts be the only people who derive those benefits when the 12 steps could be practiced by anybody?
Yeah.
And
That's good.
so I just wanted to democratize the steps
Mm.
and have them be something that everyone could take advantage of and be blessed by in the same way that my
Hmm.
life has been. And by the way, it's amazing, right? Like the 12 steps have been used by God to save tens of millions of people's lives.
Yeah.
And what they've done isn't just help them give up a behavior or a substance. It's helped them in such bigger, broader ways that people don't know about.
Hmm.
And I just want everybody to have access to them.
I love that. I love that. So you have been in recovery since 1987, you said, and you were clearly on here recently, not 1987. I know that the story that led to getting you like to go after this book and make it really public was this setback that you had
Yeah.
after the release of your last book. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I had a relapse in 2020, and then I decided that was a personal, private thing, which is obviously perfectly understandable, right? Like
Sure.
I wasn't going to go on Instagram and start talking about, hey, guess what I did? It's like, no, that's not
Yeah.
my way, and nor did I think that was wise or actually appropriate. What I wanted to do was just kind of work on my own life for a couple of years
Yes.
and
Good.
um, yeah, so we get 4+ years into it, and I'm like, I think I need to write a book. I feel this book inside me,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
because of the difference the 12 steps have made in my life.
Yeah. Looking back at that setback you had, can you connect it to pressure, stress, at any like returning theme or lie of your life? I'm just curious as if that you were able to
You know,
identify that.
Lisa, addictions are very complicated, right?
Mm,
And um, there are so many forces that come into play to create um, an addiction, right, or a relapse, and
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
certainly pressures.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, there were a lot of pressures. Was there
mm-hmm.
COVID? Yes, there was COVID.
Oh gosh, that's right. 2020. Yeah.
Was there unresolved trauma in my life that I hadn't really completely worked through that came back and got me in that season? Yes, absolutely. And I think more is being revealed to me as time goes on as to why that happened. But it
Right.
also just happened because I'm human,
Go. That's right, Ian. Yeah.
right? Like, this is what humans do, right? When humans are in pain, they look for outside external
Mm,
solutions to internal problems. And
mm-hmm.
that could be drinking, it could be drugs, but it could also be overeating, it could be perfectionism, it could be people pleasing, it could be sports betting, it could be pornography, it could be, I mean, the list of addictions that I could actually roll out here could take up the next hour, and I still wouldn't have hit all the possible,
Right.
ways that people can get entangled in self-defeating behaviors that is just part of the human condition.
Wow. In your book, you call that the big
Yes.
ache, that we all have the big ache. This is why no one is exempt from addiction. We're all addicts. We're all attaching ourselves to something when we are made to attach ourselves to Christ. I read the first time this ever enlightened for me, and I was like, whoa, because my choice of this is what I need to feel good in life. That's most obvious to me early on was I needed my husband to love me. I
Mm,
needed love. I needed someone to tell me like that. So that was an addiction. I could not feel well unless that ache was filled, and it had to be filled by my husband because he had a duty to do that. You now have a title that you should be feeling this. And it almost destroyed our marriage, which actually turned me towards Christ. That was it. Like it was either
yes.
I was done. I was going to be divorced and have nothing, or I needed to figure out what is this going on inside of me and the big ache. And I remember I read the book Grace and Addiction by Gerald May.
Oh my gosh, great book.
Great, great, but oh, oldie too, been around a
Hmm.
while. That word grace and addiction. And when he said that that to be alive is to be addicted, and to be alive and addicted is to stand in need of grace. I was like, oh.
Yes.
And that your book at this time now, The Big Ache, speak to what you see culturally, maybe in the moment of how we all ache and what the 12 steps can do.
Yeah, well, the big ache has been going on since the beginning of time, right? Because we live in well, not from the beginning of time, but let's say post Eden, right?
Yes, that's
Like
right. That's
like
right.
uh, the moment we stepped out of the garden, welcome the big ache, which is this
Hmm. Gosh, that's good.
powerful hunger for God that
That's good.
gets, you know, can get all twisted up inside of us. And the way it appears, is just in the that internal sense of not being at home in the world, right?
Wow.
Like that we all have. And it shows
Yeah.
up as anxiety, it shows up as depression, it shows up as trauma, it shows up
Mm.
as disappointment, it shows up as, confidence deficits, it shows up as,
Mm.
the list is endless, right? The big ache of
Mm.
being human.
Mm.
And humans don't like to feel bad. It's just
Turns
let's just let's
out.
just basic, right? Here are the
Yes.
basics. And
Yes.
so what happens is we look for ways to soothe ourselves apart from God, right? It's like,
Yeah,
okay, God,
that's right.
I mean, you're great, but I also need this glass of wine. Or I
Mm.
also need, it's sort of like a little bit of a spiritual workaround.
Yes,
And
sir.
then the problem is that we, as I mentioned earlier, right, we look for external solutions to internal problems, but eventually the external solution becomes a bigger problem than the one it was trying to solve.
Crazy making. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I loved what you shared, and thank you for your vulnerability a few moments ago because you actually told a recovery story.
Yeah.
So, so let's just define an addiction. An addiction
Yeah.
is how would I say this? A compulsive attachment to anything we use to escape discomfort, to fill a void, that's you, to
Yep.
numb pain, to bolster our
Mm.
self-esteem or whatever it is, even at the cost of our own well-being.
Wow.
Despite negative consequences, we
Yep.
continue to do it, right? So
Yep.
you were kind of describing, I don't want to label you here, but just tell me if I'm right. What you were describing is sort of classic codependence.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Learned it well from my mom. Yes. Yes.
Yes. And so they actually have 12-step groups just for people who have problems with codependency.
Wow.
One is
Did not
called
know.
Coda, and the other one is called Al-Anon,
Okay.
which is a group for people who are living with addicts or related
Hmm.
somehow to addicts in some form or fashion. And codependency is okay. I am addicted to a person,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
that addiction has mood altering effects. Like
Hmm.
when that person loves me, I feel great. I
Hmm.
feel so good inside. It has a
Hmm.
drug-like quality to it,
Hmm.
right? You get a
Hmm.
dopamine hit when husband hugs, you get a
Right.
right, right. But it eventually has negative consequences.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually now hijacked and enslaved to your husband's response to you.
Yep.
If it's negative, you go into withdrawal. When it's
Yep.
positive, you get high. And it's like, guess
Yep.
what? The 12 steps could really help that.
Yeah. And he's not allowed to be human. He's not
Right.
allowed to have a bad day at work and then come home and that bad day comes in the front door and I need him to be something. It is absolutely crazy making. And you said this earlier, you were referring to this, but I wrote this down. Your friend Mary said, you know, you hit rock bottom when you break your own heart. So back to
Mhm.
that cycle. So unpack the moment maybe you knew you were breaking your own heart.
Oh, well, here's the thing about, addictions are so powerful. I had, sometimes people have to have serial experiences of brokenheartedness
Uh-huh.
before they finally have their wake up and
That was
go, I
me.
need
Yeah.
I need help, right? Oh golly, I need
Yeah.
help. And
Yeah.
so I had a number of those in 1987. It was, hiding liquor around the house and,
Mm-hmm.
sneaking and secretive. And if I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't drinking, I was thinking about drinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then later in that second go round, very similar patterns again,
Mm-hmm.
um, and knowing I was heading toward trouble, but you know, I love what Anne Lamott said. She says trying to get an addiction under control is like trying to put an octopus to bed, right? It's like
I read
it is
that. Yeah.
not right. It's not simple, and so you need some help, and
Yeah.
that's what the 12 steps do for everybody, not just again. I want to beat this out of people's brains, right?
Go.
This is not a them problem; it's an us problem,
Us problem. I'll say it
and
with you. Yep.
yeah, it's an us problem. So I really think the 12 steps are a design for living that Christians can get their hands on and go, oh, wow, this is just a really cool way of organizing a spiritual pattern of living that will that will give me, how do I want to say it? That will bring me closer to God than I previously thought I could ever be.
Mm. Mm. All right, let's go back. I want you to define addiction again. I love that. So I want them to hear it again, how you define addiction. And then let's go ahead, because I know there are people here who have heard of the 12 steps, even myself, and they just need to hear those 12 steps again, if you don't mind. Just
Sure.
give it to them and see how, and I'd ask the listener to just see this in light of the gospel as well, to see how if you can
Oh,
find
yeah.
it in there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, a definition of addiction: addiction is a compulsive attachment to a person, a behavior, or a substance that we use to escape discomfort, to fill a void, or to numb pain or trauma, even at the cost of our own well being. So, it eventually has negative consequences,
That's right.
right?
But eventually you break your own heart.
Yes, eventually it's going to break your own heart, right? And
Mhm.
maybe a couple of times over, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So in as regards the steps, think of them this way, and I'll go through them, but obviously I don't want to that take up too much time
Mhm.
given the length of our interview. But steps 1 to 3 are really about mending and deepening your relationship with God. For some people, it's establishing for the first time their relationship with God. Okay.
Mhm.
Then 4 through
Mhm.
7 is going to be about mending and deepening your relationship with yourself.
Huh.
8 and 9 is going to be about mending your relationship with others. And then 10 through 12 is going to be about how do I cultivate a lifestyle that supports spiritual growth in each of those domains of my life,
Wow.
right? So maybe we would think of it this way. Steps 1 to 3 are about your upward life, right? Upward,
Yep.
your relationship with God.
Mhm.
Then 4 through 7 is about your
Mhm.
inward life.
Mhm.
8 and 9 are about your outward life, your
Mhm.
relationships, and then 10 through 12 kind of is the what we call maintenance steps. How do I maintain health in my inward, upward, and outward life?
Mhm. Mhm. That's good. Well, how obvious is the gospel there? Right? Love
I mean,
God.
it's
It's
yes,
the two commandments. Love God, yourself, others.
yep,
And then we go live a life that looks appealing, contagious, not because we're performing, but because we're abiding, we're
yes,
connected.
exactly right. So step 1 is
Yeah.
the step that you have to get 100% correct. Every other step, you just need to do your best, right? But step 1 has to be 100% owned for the rest of the system to work. So step 1 is we admitted we were powerless over blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. So it could be we admitted we were powerless over our eating. We're
Yeah.
powerless over alcohol, or it could be, I admit that I am powerless over, um, codependency. I'm powerless. And by the way, people don't just have one addiction. I guarantee you, people have multiple addictions, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and they're all on a continuum from mild to severe, right? So some are a little bit less, they're a little bit more benign than others, but they're still problematic in the spiritual life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. Right.
So we just have to admit, we got to say to God, look, I'm out of ammo here. Like
Yeah.
I have tried to stop this on my own,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
can't. It now has me, and and my life is becoming unmanageable. Now, for some people, that means I lost my car, my job, my wife, my kids. So there you go on the severe end. But it could
Mm.
just be I'm an anxious mess all the time,
Yeah.
or I'm empty, or I am emotionally unmanageable, right? Or
Yeah.
I just feel like my life is out of control, and I look great on the outside, but on the
Yeah.
inside,
That
I'm
was
not
me.
doing well,
That's right.
right? So I just don't know of anyone who believes in the gospel who could argue with that step. Like, it's just like,
You're stuck. Everyone get in group. Like you're
yeah, it's
in.
like, yeah, it's just the surrender step,
It is.
actually. It's,
Yeah.
it's the I give up step, right? God's
Yeah.
going to have to show up and do for me what I cannot do for myself, or it's not going to happen.
And
I'm
if
going to be
that is
stuck here.
not in place, the rest of it, you're going nowhere.
Right. So, step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now,
Mm.
you have to remember that the person who wrote these, Bill W., had a profound spiritual awakening, and he wanted to make that available not just to Christians, but to everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so he didn't get very specific and say, oh, Jesus, right? Like came to believe that
Yeah.
Jesus, could restore us to sanity. He left that up to individuals to decide how to work that out, right? And I've seen many people in 12 step communities come in with a very vague idea of who God is, and then over time discovered Christ, like it's just
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yep.
So I love this step too because it doesn't say believed that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It said came to believe. I
Oh,
love
that's good.
that
Yeah,
because what it means is, I don't know about you, but I'm still coming to believe.
that's right.
Like, I don't have belief all nailed down. I mean, I have plenty of days where I have to go, God, I know you can restore me to sanity, but I'm having a lot of trouble right now trusting it's
Yeah,
going to happen, right? So
yeah,
the steps are very gracious. It doesn't say you got to do this perfectly. This It's like, no, just work on coming to believe, right? Then the
that's
next
good.
step is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God.
Good.
Okay.
Yep.
So those are the steps that are all about mending your relationship with God. Now, I have lots of Christian friends who are like, well, I got that buttoned up. Let's go on to 4. And I'm like, not so fast, cowgirl. Because when you get into the steps, they sound really simple, but they're quite deep, which is why, by the way, we have a workbook that's 120 pages that goes with this
Yeah.
book uh, that helps people really dig deeper. Because, like, for example, I had 2 seminary degrees when I showed up in treatment.
Wow, there
I
you
had
go.
best-selling books.
Come
I
on.
had, I mean, come on, really? Like, I'm a
Right.
therapist. I'm a priest, right? And I had to go back and go, all right, well, who is this God? Because clearly the whatever mental conception I had of God, it just it wasn't it needed to be dialed in correctly. It wasn't
Yeah.
correct, right? And
Yeah.
and we are always having to update our understanding of who God is as we mature, right? Like
Yeah.
more and more is being revealed. So, you
Yeah.
know, you got to kind of sometimes go back to square one to figure
Yeah.
out, because here's the thing. Christians say all I got to do is rely on Jesus. And I'm like, okay, well then tell me why you have so many other fixes in your life.
Yeah. Go.
If Jesus is your all, then please tell me why you have all these other fixes.
Yep.
All these
Yes.
supplementary little things that you do to make life manageable apart from God. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't want to go through all 12 because it would take too much time, maybe, but
Okay.
unless you want me to,
Well, we
it's
can
up to
stop
you.
there. I'm going to actually have listeners, we want you to go and find out more from Ian Cron. I mean, the fact that you have this workbook too sounds like amazing. So we'll go completely through the steps. I love that we've focused on the God portion because
Yes.
I think what happens is it just gets messy. People get so tripped up on the ideas of that what they have believed about God or what they believe to be true, and just thoughts coming to my mind. And I want to put this out there for you. I even know people in my own family, addicts, who have gone through 12 steps and they get really frustrated. They actually get hung up on the fact that they're not talking about Jesus. Like there's two, they get confused, the Islamic person or whoever is there, and they can get thrown by the fact that they feel like it's deception, like they have to talk about Jesus. And to me, that just shows their heart being so afraid, and it's more of a religious heart, like this it has to be this way, so it's the fear that's behind there. I often ask the questions of what's behind that, like God can move in any room and Jesus can still be the way even
Yeah.
in a room of people. Maybe talk to that, because I think sometimes I just feel like
Yeah.
the church doesn't know how stuck we are, and so then we blame other people's and say it's not for me, it's not enough Jesus for me. I'm like, really? Okay.
So here's a kooky story. In the book, I tell the story of a guy named Gene. Gene was the senior pastor of a large, more conservative congregation, kind of, independent church. And he also had a drinking problem. And that
Mm-hmm.
drinking problem escalated, as addictions do.
Yep.
And he ended up showing up to church one Sunday, a little sozzled. And he gets up in the pulpit in front of a couple thousand people, and they
Mm-hmm.
realize, uh-oh, Gene's drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
elders go up and they usher him out. And they did the exact thing you would hope a church wouldn't do. They fired him. Instead of
Oh,
helping him, and saying, "Oh, well, this is what humans do. They make mistakes, they go on these misadventures, and he just needs our help," right? They just didn't understand.
yes.
They fired him. A couple of months later, I'm in the basement of a church, and as you know, lots of 12-step meetings happen in the basements of
That's right.
churches after hours, sometimes during the day, but early in the morning, late at night.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he said, it's so ironic. He said, I have experienced more love, grace, kindness, forgiveness, acceptance, and care in the basement of a church than I ever did
Yeah.
upstairs in the sanctuary. He said, how I wish they knew what they were missing, in terms of what's going on downstairs. If they saw,
Yeah.
I wish they had the same experience I'm having in these rooms,
Yeah.
that the people upstairs would have the same experience, right? And that
Yep.
that was another reason I wanted to write this book, right? Yeah, well,
So
guess
good.
what? They can have this experience. You
That's
know what I
good.
mean? And so
Yes.
what I say to those people is, look, Jesus shows up in many disguises in people's lives, and
Mm.
we have to be more patient. We have to be more open to God showing up over time in people's lives. The gospel is so clear about this. Seek and ye shall find. And a person who's really seeking God, if the gospel is true, will eventually find the God of Scripture.
That's good. That's
And
good.
I've seen it over and over and over again. But people, you're right. There's usually a lot of anxiety under those objections.
Yeah. 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 I'm just so, I look forward to the healing of the church. And I think this message you're bringing is part of it. We can't heal if we don't confess we're addicts. There are things we really like to
Yeah.
control.
Or, and if you can't cop to being an addict, how about just cop to, uh, you know, first step? We admitted we were powerless over sin. Can we just start there?
Which pretty much sounds like the reason we come to Christ. Like,
Yeah,
yep,
exactly. Hi, why can't I do the things I want to do, and why do I
do it.
keep doing the things I don't want to do? He's describing an addiction.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so can we even just all just cop to we admitted we were powerless over our desire to play God?
Yeah, right.
Uh, you
Lord,
know,
help us.
powerless over our need to control people, places, and things.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, this is what I'm trying to say is like, okay, your addiction may be socially acceptable, but that doesn't make it any less spiritually damaging than a person who's addicted to alcohol.
that's good. Oof. Oh, and yet it's so insidious. It's harder to put your finger on than someone
Yes.
who, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. At 12-step meetings, you'll often hear people say something like this. My name is so and so, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. And I remember years ago when I first heard someone say that, I was like, grateful? What are you out of your mind? And then what I
Mm,
realized was there's so much to be grateful for. Addictions are often, I like to frame them for people as invitations from God to a relationship, an intimacy with Him that they did not know existed previously,
yeah, yeah.
right?
That's beautiful.
So,
So good.
uh, like an addiction can really actually lead you into a kind of relationship with God that is so much richer and so much
Yeah,
deeper than the
yeah.
one you had prior to your falling into its snare. So, you know, um, uh, yeah, go ahead.
We have a community back here in Revelation Wellness, and it's a food and body addiction community.
Hmm.
People that are confessing that they feel powerless over food, powerless over their bodies, not feeling like they're a problem. They're just in that anxious, depressed state. What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I would quote the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, who said, "There is a solution."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There is a
Amen.
solution. Well, the first thing
Amen.
I'd say is, look, I often hear people say, so and so has a drinking problem, or so and so has an eating problem, or so and so has a porn problem, or so and so has a spending shopping problem, or
Yes.
somebody has this problem. I go, no, they don't. I say, so and so has an alcohol solution.
Wow. That's good.
Somebody has an eating solution. Somebody has a shopping solution, right? And and when you say that, they look at you a little funny. And I say, do you not understand that the addiction isn't the problem?
That's right.
It's the solution to another problem that that person has not yet figured out how to face, right? So, okay, so let's take your example. Do you mind if I use that?
No, please
Okay,
do.
so you have this actually addiction to your husband and to what your husband can give you. Your husband is kind of a drug of choice.
Yep.
Your self-esteem is built on his reaction to you, right?
Hmm.
You have a deep need for that love. Now, in the bargain, what's happening is you are abandoning yourself, right?
Yes.
You are
I've heard that before. Yes.
yes, you are relying on him to give you something that only God and you can give yourself,
Yeah.
namely the love that you were searching for
Yep.
to solve the problem of the big ache inside,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Now, understand that your husband's not, you don't have a addiction to that was a solution, not a problem.
I love it. You're right.
Okay.
You're
Now,
absolutely right. Yeah.
right. So when you put it that way, all of a sudden what comes up for people is they have this aha moment whenever I say that. They're like, oh, I now have so much more compassion for my Uncle Bob who's got a drinking problem or a gambling problem. Because I've always seen it as a problem, but it's actually his solution
Yeah.
to a deep ache inside of him.
Yeah.
And I just need to help him, if possible, by the way,
Right.
um, to maybe realize that his solution is causing him more problems than it's solving now.
Yeah.
And that if he could find a relationship with God and with himself and with others that was healed, that he would no longer, that the desire for drinking would be expelled,
Yep.
actually. He would
Yeah.
know if you solve the problem, the need for whatever your fix of choice is it,
Yeah.
you'll look at it with complete indifference.
Yeah. And don't you think that if others see in us as the church, people that God has called to himself and have been called out of darkness and our powerlessness over sin and redemption, like we're the people that if we can show up for those who are hurting and broken in a way that doesn't manipulate, control, but compassionately be is there without getting sucked in, because that requires our own health, that there would be more of a compelling argument of people saying, whatever you have, I want more of that. And then it's the solution of the real Jesus who saves and changes. I mean,
Yeah.
do you
Mm.
yearn for this as much as me? I guess is the question I hope to see.
I do, and I just want to. One of the things I hope the book does is that it normalizes conversations
Yeah.
around addictions. Addictions. People. I mean, listen. We are. Brene Brown has a great quote. She says, "We are the most addicted cohort in human history." At this
Yeah,
present moment in society,
absolutely.
we are the most addicted cohort in human history.
Hmm.
Do you, the number of people who are dying every year as a result of addictions to
Hmm.
opioids and other substances like
Hmm.
that is staggering. Like
Hmm.
it's in the hundreds of thousands.
Hmm.
And when you're talking also about addictions to things like porn, sports betting, but also just self-defeating behavior patterns, right?
Hmm.
Like our addiction to relationships, where it's like,
Hmm.
how many women do you know? So I can speak for men, but you're being a woman who are in relationships. They are in a compulsive, sick relationship with another person that uh, they can't, they just can't quit. It's like they
Yeah.
keep going back to a relationship
Yes.
that is abusive at worst, or emotionally abusive, or it's unkind, and they just keep going back. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
that's an addiction,
Yep.
and the 12 steps can help it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah,
Yeah. Well, this book is going to help us in great ways. One more thing before you go, just because we are an organization um, and a ministry helping people to practice this lifestyle. We'll go again, try again, and to live it out, to make its way so that it's a lifestyle, loving God, ourselves, others,
yep.
loving our bodies because God calls them and sees them as worthy to be redeemed. but the practices that are there, what practices or spiritual rhythms do you have in your life, physical and practical? Like for me to stay above water, breathing well, I have to XYZ almost every day. Anything practical in your life that keeps you on your way?
So many things. Okay.
We'd love any of anything
All
you
right.
just popcorn.
Okay. So I practice the steps, and the steps have very, very, stated practices that go with them, right?
Okay.
So that involves inventories, meaning doing a lot of self-examination, working, identifying, like in steps, you know, um, s- 5, 6, 7, 8, looking at my character defects and not with any
Mm.
kind of shame. It's just like, oh yeah, well, of course I do that. I'm a
Curiosity.
human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, being curious and like
Yeah.
show, and then, so there's steps. Each of the steps has to-dos, if you
Great.
will, okay,
Hmm.
associated. But for me personally, every day I have a sitting centering prayer meditation time for
Hmm.
20 to 30 minutes.
Lovely.
I meet with a trainer every single day to
Love
do
that.
weight training, and I do. So I'm a kind of a fitness kind of
Yeah.
fitness and food guy. Like
Yeah.
I'm really
Yeah.
into that stuff.
Yeah.
So is my wife.
Good.
Um, I am a person that uh, things that keep me above water would also be attending meetings, which not everyone has to do,
Yeah.
right? So some people can go through this book and say, I don't need to be part of a meeting, though I wish everyone had a 12-step community because they're so awesome and fun, actually. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so, yeah, that's just a couple of things. I mean, I could
Love
name
that.
so many more. In fact, in the book, I talk about what does my spiritual routine look like that
Yeah.
supports um, my health, physically,
Yeah.
emotionally,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, socially, intellectually, environmentally, all those things, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I do kind of go into detail about that in the fix.
Love that. Love that. I'm really excited about this book. I see it back there in the corner. For those of you on YouTube, you can see the cover right there. The Fix. It is out now. If you are hearing this message, it is out right now. Go to Amazon and get it. And Ian, where else should they go to find out more and get what you got?
Thank you. So they can certainly go to any bookstore or Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or wherever they buy their books to get a copy of The Fix. They can also learn more about what I do at my website, ianmorgancron.com. Maybe you'll throw it in the show notes.
Sure will.
And then, by the way, I have a new, obviously up until this point, my work is and has been and will continue to be around the Enneagram as a way of learning to understand ourselves. And I have a brand new assessment. I just released it. It's a test for people to learn their Enneagram type. We spent a stupid amount of money on research psychologists, really, no, actually paying research psychologists to put this test together so that it was really accurate and reliable and valid.
Ooh.
And so they can learn more about that at my website as well.
I'm gonna head over there
Go get it.
right away because yeah, as and we're building the organization back here, 40 employees. We've taken all kinds of personality tests and different ones. They're good, but we still come back to it's the best for me personally, a framework of knowing
Yeah.
your Enneagram number and then also knowing that doesn't mean you're just that number. There's
Oh no.
people locked down in that.
Thank you. I just want to say like in this particular assessment, we do everything from getting your core type, your wings, your subtype,
Mm,
describing it all. You get like a 22-page report at the back end.
awesome.
And most of my work, at least, is done with companies. So working with teams and senior management teams
Love
and
it.
people using it for onboarding with new employees
Yeah.
and all of that stuff. It's a super, super helpful tool.
Well, that is good to know, Ian. Might have to talk more on the end of this. Just that's
Come on.
fascinating. Did not know that. Awesome. All right. Well, we are grateful for you. We are excited. Bless this book, guys. Swipe up on the show notes and get everything you need. And Ian, just so grateful, grateful for your story and grateful that God's not done with you yet because
Oh man.
we want to hear
He
more.
every you know what someone said something to me the other day, and it was a young guy in a 12-step meeting. And I don't think he's been sober more than 6 months, right? And he said, and he's from the country here in Nashville, so he's got a thick accent. He goes,
Okay.
I think I just figured out that God loves fixing broken things.
Oh,
Is that not one of the most beautiful things you ever
there,
heard?
sermon over.
Mic drop.
Drop,
The
we're
whole
just,
room just went quiet when he
oh,
said it too. He goes, I think I'm just learning that God loves fixing broken things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to take you home. And I have to say that, this book is proof that our mess is the message,
yeah,
right?
right.
And God is not ever going to be done with us.
Never, never. Thank God for that. All right, brother. Thank you for your time today. We bless you. We're grateful, and we'll see you again and talk soon.
Cheers. Thank you, Alisa.
Thanks for watching, and remember, this video was brought to you by Revelation Wellness Instructor Training Program. Do you love Jesus and have a passion for fitness and wellness? Or maybe you're tired of the roller coaster of obsessing over and neglecting your body, and you know there has to be more to fitness. Let us equip you to lead others to health and wholeness rooted in Jesus Christ through our faith-based fitness instructor training program. Go to our website to learn more and listen to testimonies of people just like you who are bringing hope and healing to their communities as fitness teacher gospel preachers. Click the link in the description of this video and download a packet to get your journey to health and wholeness through Christ started today.